3 months ago, I walked into his office as just another employee. Today, he's worth $2.3 billion and can't function without me. My name is Maya, and this is how I accidentally became the obsession of one of the world's most powerful men. But here's the twist. If you've ever wondered what it's really like when love meets billions, hit that like button right now. You're about to hear a story that will change everything you think you know about wealthy men and love. Trust me, you won't see this coming. 3 months ago, my biggest worry was whether I could afford groceries and rent in the same week. My name is Maya, I'm 26, and I thought I had my life figured out. Living in Atlanta, working as a marketing coordinator at some tech startup that promised to revolutionize communication, but mostly just burn through investor money. I was making $35,000 a year, which sounds decent until you realize that buys you a studio apartment where you can hear your neighbor's entire life story through paper-thin walls. I'd just gotten out of a relationship with Carlos, my college boyfriend, who had the nerve to tell me I aimed too low in life. This coming from a guy who spent 3 years talking about starting a podcast and never recorded a single episode. But his words stuck with me, like a splinter you can't dig out. Maybe I was settling. Maybe I was playing it safe. Maybe I deserved more than counting pennies and eating ramen for dinner. That's when I saw the job posting. Personal assistant position at Cross Ventures, one of the biggest venture capital firms on the East Coast. The salary was 3 times what I was making. I'd never worked in finance, barely knew what venture capital meant, but I needed a change. I needed to prove to myself that I could reach higher. So I polished up my resume, bought a blazer from Target that I hoped looked expensive, and applied for a job that felt completely out of my league. Nathan Cross wasn't just rich, he was stupid rich. The kind of rich where he could buy small countries if he got bored on a Tuesday. 34 years old, self-made, and worth about $2.3 billion. I'd Googled him, obviously, and every article said the same thing. Brilliant, ruthless, and completely impossible to work with. Forbes called him the Ice King of tech. TechCrunch wrote a whole piece about how he made grown CEOs cry in boardrooms. But here's what Google didn't tell you. Nathan Cross was a ghost. No social media, no public relationships, no paparazzi photos at charity galas. The man was like a business urban legend. Some people whispered he was gay and hiding it. Others claimed he was asexual, married to his work. The truth was, nobody knew anything about his personal life, and that's exactly how he wanted it. My first day was supposed to be orientation with HR. Instead, they threw me straight into the Shark Tank. "Mr. Cross wants to meet you immediately," the receptionist said, looking at me like I was about to walk into my own execution. I was nervous, sweating through my Target blazer, clutching a coffee I'd grabbed from the lobby to calm my nerves. Big mistake. I knocked on his office door and heard a cold "enter." The moment I stepped inside, I knew I was in trouble. Nathan Cross was standing by his floor-to-ceiling windows, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. He turned around, and our eyes met for exactly half a second before I tripped over my own feet. Hot coffee went flying, landing squarely on his pristine white shirt, and what I later learned was a $5,000 Italian suit. The silence that followed felt like it lasted a year. I stood there horrified, watching coffee drip off his jacket, waiting for him to fire me before I'd even officially started. Instead, he looked down at his ruined suit, then back at me, and said in the most emotionless voice I'd ever heard, "Interesting first impression, Ms. Maya." I thought for sure I was done. Who spills coffee on a billionaire and keeps their job? But the next morning, I got a call from HR telling me to report directly to Nathan's office. Not just report, I was being assigned as his personal assistant, permanently. The other assistants looked at me like I'd just been handed a death sentence. Jennifer from accounting pulled me aside and whispered, "Honey, he goes through assistants like tissues, 3 in the last 2 months. Rebecca lasted 4 days. Poor girl had a nervous breakdown. Another girl, Lisa, shook her head sadly. He's impossible, never sleeps, expects you to read his mind, and fires people for breathing too loud. Good luck. But here's the thing, I couldn't afford to be picky. I had student loans, credit card debt, and a dream of maybe someday owning furniture that wasn't second-hand. The salary they offered was life-changing money. Enough to pay off my debt, move to a real apartment, maybe even save for the future. So when they asked if I wanted the position, despite every red flag waving in my face, I said yes. Nathan's first words to me as his assistant weren't hello or welcome to the team. They were, I don't do small talk, I don't explain myself twice, and I don't tolerate incompetence. Your job is to anticipate my needs before I have them. Can you handle that? I nodded, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. Good, he said, turning back to his computer. Your desk is outside. We start now. As I sat down at what was apparently my new desk, I couldn't help but wonder what I'd gotten myself into. The man was a walking contradiction, brilliant enough to build an empire, but apparently couldn't figure out how to keep an assistant happy for more than a few weeks. Little did I know, I was about to become the exception to every rule Nathan Cross had ever made about keeping people at arm's length. The first few weeks working for Nathan were like walking on eggshells made of thin ice. He had rules for everything. Rule number 1, no personal conversations. Rule number 2, no eye contact unless he initiated it. Rule number 3, never, ever offer opinions unless specifically asked. He operated like a machine, and I was supposed to be another cog in his perfectly oiled system. I followed those rules religiously, for exactly 3 weeks. Then came the day that changed everything between us. I was organizing his schedule when I heard voices rising from his office. Through the glass walls, I could see Nathan in a heated board meeting. His face was red, veins popping in his neck, and suddenly he went very still. Then he did something I'd never seen him do. He excused himself and walked out of his own meeting. I found him in the bathroom, sitting on the floor, struggling to breathe. He was having a full-blown panic attack. This man who commanded rooms full of the most powerful people in the world couldn't catch his breath. Without thinking, I knelt beside him and started talking quietly, telling him to breathe with me. I counted slowly, matching his breathing, until the panic faded from his eyes. When he could speak again, he looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "Thank you," he whispered. Just 2 words, but they felt like everything. The man who never showed weakness had let me see him at his most vulnerable. I helped him back to his office, told the board he was dealing with an urgent call, and we never spoke about what happened. But something had shifted between us, like a wall had cracked, just enough to let light through. After that day, Nathan started staying later at the office. At first, I thought it was business as usual. The man was known for his insane work hours. But I began to notice he only stayed late on the days I was working late too. He'd find reasons to call me into his office, asking my opinion on things that had nothing to do with my job description. One night, around 10 p.m., I brought him coffee and found him staring out the window, looking more tired than I'd ever seen him. "You should go home," I said softly. He turned to me and for the first time really looked at me. "I don't sleep well at home," he admitted. "Too quiet, too much space to think." That's when I started bringing him tea instead of coffee. My grandmother's chamomile recipe that always helped me relax. The first time I set it on his desk, he looked suspicious. "What's this?" "Just try it," I said. The next morning, the cup was empty, and he asked for the recipe. Not demanded, asked. Those late nights became our unspoken routine. We'd work in comfortable silence, and sometimes he'd share small pieces of himself. How he started his first company in his college dorm room. How he hadn't taken a real vacation in 8 years. How sometimes he missed being just a regular person who could go grocery shopping without being recognized. I started to see past the billionaire facade to the lonely man underneath, and I think he started to see me as more than just another employee who might disappoint him. Everything changed the day Nathan asked me what I thought about the Henderson acquisition, not as his assistant, but as someone whose judgment he valued. I was honest, told him I thought they were overvaluing a company with declining user engagement. Most people would never dare contradict a billionaire's business instincts. But Nathan listened. Really listened. 3 days later, he pulled out of the deal, saved himself $200 million. The next week, Henderson's stock crashed when their user data leaked. Nathan didn't gloat or take credit. He just looked at me across his desk and said, "Thank you for telling me the truth." That's when he started including me in meetings, asking for my perspective on potential investments. The other executives looked confused. Why was the assistant offering opinions on merger strategies? But Nathan would introduce me simply as Maya, who sees things differently. He valued my outsider perspective, my ability to cut through the corporate nonsense and see what really mattered. Then came the night he asked me to dinner. Business dinner, he clarified quickly. The kind where I need someone who can spot the lies people tell. But he picked a restaurant that wasn't the usual sterile business spots. Instead, it was this tiny Italian place in Little 5 Points, where you couldn't get a table without a 2-week reservation unless you were Nathan Cross. He'd rented out the entire restaurant. Just us, candlelight, and no talk of business after the first course. Instead, he asked me about my dreams, my family, what made me laugh. For 3 hours, I forgot he was a billionaire. He was just Nathan, funny, curious, and surprisingly vulnerable when he wasn't performing for the world. The night everything shifted between us started like any other. Nathan had been quiet all day, distracted during meetings, snapping at people who didn't deserve it. I found him in his office at midnight, not working, just sitting in the dark staring at an old photo on his phone. "My mother," he said without looking up, showing me a picture of a beautiful black woman holding a young boy. She died when I was 15, single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. Never had enough money, but she had enough love to make up for everything we lacked. I sat down across from him, not saying anything, just letting him talk. He told me how his mother used to hum while cooking dinner after working 18-hour days. How she taught him that success meant nothing if you forgot where you came from. How her death drove him to build his empire, but also left him afraid to let anyone get close. "You remind me of her," he said quietly. "Not just how you look, but your strength, your kindness, the way you make everything feel less impossible." His voice broke on the last word, and I saw tears in his eyes for the first time. This man who conquered boardrooms was breaking down in front of me. "She'd be proud of you," I whispered, reaching across to touch his hand. He didn't pull away. Instead, he turned his palm up and intertwined our fingers. We sat like that for a long time, holding hands in the dark, and I felt something inside me crack open. "I've never told anyone about her," he admitted. "I've never felt safe enough." The weight of his trust settled between us like a bridge neither of us expected to build. 3 months into our secret relationship, everything fell apart on a Wednesday morning. I woke up to my phone buzzing non-stop. Texts, calls, notifications I'd never seen before. When I opened my social media, my heart stopped. There we were, splashed across every gossip site and tabloid. Nathan and me leaving his penthouse together, holding hands, him kissing my forehead. The headlines were brutal. Billionaire's shocking secret romance. Nathan Cross's mysterious black beauty. From assistant to girlfriend, the gold digger story. People I didn't even know were dissecting our relationship, calling me everything from a social climber to worse things I can't repeat. My phone kept ringing. Reporters, strangers, people wanting my story. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like my privacy had been ripped away and sold for clicks. Nathan tried to shield me, had his security team escort me to work, but the damage was done. The internet had decided who I was before I even had a chance to speak for myself. The worst part wasn't the media attention, it was reading the comments, people saying I didn't belong in his world, that I was clearly using him, that our relationship was some kind of publicity stunt. The racial undertones in every article, the assumptions about my character based on the color of my skin, it cut deeper than I expected. The board meeting happened the next day. I wasn't supposed to know about it, but Nathan's assistant, my replacement apparently, let it slip. The board was furious. This wasn't the image they wanted for their company. Nathan Cross, the calculating businessman, compromised by a relationship that made him look distracted and unprofessional. Meanwhile, I learned about Christina, Nathan's ex-fiancée from 5 years ago. Old money, Harvard MBA, everything I wasn't. She'd been in London, but the news brought her flying back. Suddenly she was everywhere, having lunch with board members, showing up at company events, making it clear she was available and interested. Nathan tried to protect me from all of it, but I could see the pressure mounting. His business partners were threatening to pull out of deals. There was talk of a vote of no confidence. Everything he'd built was threatened because he chose to love me publicly. Then came the ultimatum. Winston Technology, Nathan's biggest potential merger, worth over $3 billion. The CEO made it clear the deal hinged on Nathan's image staying stable and appropriate. Translation: dump the black girl, get back with the white socialite, and everyone wins. Except me. Except us. Except everything we'd built together. The conversation that ended, everything happened in his office on a Friday evening. Nathan looked exhausted, older than I'd ever seen him. "Maya, we need to talk," he said, and I knew. The way he avoided my eyes, the distance in his voice, I already knew what was coming. The Winston deal, he started, then stopped, tried again. This merger could revolutionize clean energy technology, millions of jobs, billions in green technology investment. He was trying to convince himself as much as me. But, I asked, even though I didn't want to hear the answer. But Winston's board won't move forward if our relationship continues to be a distraction. He couldn't even say the truth, that they wouldn't do business with a man who loved a black woman. So what are you saying, Nathan? I'm saying maybe we need to take a break, let things cool down, give it some time. Take a break, like we were some teenage couple having a fight, like love was something you could pause and resume when it was convenient. I felt something inside me shatter, but I kept my voice steady. You're choosing the business. You're choosing them. It wasn't a question. I'm choosing the future, the bigger picture. What we could build together when all this settles. I cut him off. Number you're choosing right now, Nathan. And it's not me. 6 weeks after I left, everything changed again. I was at my new job, a non-profit focusing on education for underprivileged kids, making a fraction of what I earned with Nathan, but feeling more fulfilled than I had in months. That's when the news broke. Nathan Cross had pulled out of the Winston deal. $3 billion. Gone. Just like that. The business world was in shock. Forbes called it the most expensive romantic gesture in corporate history. The board was furious, investors were panicking, but Nathan didn't seem to care. Then came the bigger shock. He'd broken up with Christina, publicly, at a charity gala, in front of 500 guests and every camera in the city. Someone posted the video online, Nathan walking away from her mid-conversation, leaving her standing alone on the dance floor. The reporters were calling it a mental breakdown. I called it finally finding his backbone. He showed up at my office on a Tuesday morning, looking like he hadn't slept in weeks. My co-workers stared as this billionaire in a wrinkled suit stood in our small non-profit lobby, holding a manila envelope and looking more nervous than I'd ever seen him. "Maya," he said simply, "I choose you. I choose us. I choose love over everything else I thought mattered." But I wasn't that easy. I couldn't be. You can't just show up here and expect everything to go back to normal, Nathan. You hurt me. You chose them over me when it mattered. I know, he said, and I'll regret that choice for the rest of my life. But I'm here now, really here, asking for a chance to prove that you're more important than any deal, any board, any amount of money. I made him prove it, told him we couldn't speak for 30 days. If he still felt the same way after that, really felt it without the pressure of the moment, then maybe we could talk. Those 30 days changed everything. Nathan didn't just wait, he acted. He sold half his company's holdings, donating billions to educational charities and organizations supporting women of color in business. He restructured his entire board, removing anyone who had pressured him to end our relationship. When the 30 days were up, he showed up at my apartment with adoption papers for a golden retriever puppy. "Remember when we talked about getting a dog together?" he asked, his voice shaky. "You said you always wanted one but couldn't afford the deposit in your old apartment." He named her Hope. "Because that's what you gave me when I thought I'd lost everything that mattered." "I'm not asking you to be my +1 anymore," he said, kneeling on my doorstep with this adorable puppy in his arms. "I'm asking to be yours, in every way that counts. Maya, will you let me spend the rest of my life proving I choose you?" Looking at him, vulnerable, real, holding our dog with tears in his eyes, I finally understood what he'd learned during those 30 days apart. Love isn't about grand gestures or billion-dollar deals. It's about choice. And he chose me. Finally, completely, and without reservation. "Yes," I whispered, and we both started crying. "Yes, Nathan. Let's choose each other." Maya's story proves that real love doesn't see bank accounts, it sees souls. But here's what she learned that changed everything. Never settle for being someone's secret. If this story moved you, smash that subscribe button and tell me in the comments. Would you have made the same choice Maya did? Part 2 of this story drops next week,